Shavua Tov. Nice to see you. Nice to hear you. I'm live from Tiberias, Israel. I did my first Shabbos basically alone. I needed some time to get things in my head straight. It was marvelous to be home, even though it's not a home, but it's a room, even though there are 150 million things to be done before it's going to be a home. First of all, of course, I have to find one. That's another story. But there is a certain feeling of great security that basically you don't have anyplace else except when you're actually here. And that means as a Jew. There are many articles this week about Israel using, let's say, alternative ways to win the war. Alternative ways spiritually, that they're using magic, outside help from how do you call these people? Seers. And you know something? I just don't get these people. First of all, 90%, 95% of all of the garbage that is being written, is fake, horrid stuff that is totally untrue and is being gobbled up by the press as it is being gobbled up by everybody else around the world, from the big guy to the little guy. But this statement that Israel is using external, la. Okay. So I have news for you. Yes, we are. We always have. He's called God. He's called Hashem. He's called Tprah. We have 72 names to call him. We have 5 books of Moses called the Torah to call him. We have 150 Psalms to call him. Yes, you're absolutely correct. We definitely work with the greatest power in the universe. He is our Father. He is our rock. He is our protector. To him we go with everything, big or small. He's the only one who listens. He's the only one who really loves us and whose people we are. You're absolutely correct. We definitely use the greatest power in the universe that makes everybody look like nothing. We saw it with Balak last week. Couldn't do anything that God didn't put into his mouth. Actually, it's Bilam. Okay, the Prasha is called Balak. Bilam is the magician. Couldn't do it. Could not do it. Whom God curses will be cursed. Whom God blesses will be blessed. So the words that came out of his mouth were blessings. And our soldiers work humanly impossible ways to save lives. Blessings from God. How can you be so ignorant not to understand and to write this garbage and to listen to this nonsense and reprint it in other languages? What are you thinking about? The Jewish people have one God. The Jewish people are the example of Torah. The Jewish people have no other God. And when they do make mistakes, and they do make mistakes, who is the one who is punishing immediately, doesn't wait around for anybody? In last week's Parsha, 24,000 died in the plague. Why? Why? Because their moral standards were not according to the wishes and the laws of Hashem. When Bilam could not do anything except come up with the most beautiful poems of the entire Torah, discussing and speaking about the Jewish people, when he realized that there was no way that Hashem was going to give him the opportunity to come up with curses, that's what he was hired for, to curse the Jewish people. So in the end, when he was already ready to go home, what does he do? He says to Balak, tell the Moabite women to invite the Jews to their feasts so that they can eat and be immoral with them and prostrate themselves to the Moabite gods. Israel thus became attached to the deity Baal Peor. What happens? They go off the deep end. That's it. Immorality. Take a look at today. I don't have much to say about it. It's extremely clear. So it doesn't pay to go into the subject of what is going on in the world that is beyond any standard of morality of the Torah. And let's say that for our standards, it's impossible. Unfortunately, there are too many of us who have been attached and have attached themselves, if not to Baal Peor, but to whatever there is, money, material, many different things, but all of it at the end of the day has to do with the morality and with the essence of who we are as Jews. So you were hiding yourself for the last 30 years. So nobody even knows that you're Jewish. Don't fool yourself. In 1930, they didn't know either. They thought. But everybody was rounded up. The reformists who created Reform Judaism to make it applicable to the world's way of doing things. Everybody went. Nobody got away with not. And interestingly enough, there is enough written about the fact that when it came down to all of it, nobody denied God, went into the gas chambers singing Ani Ma'amin, I believe, at the last moments of their lives, when they denied all of their lives. On that moment is when Teshuvah came. So here we go with this whole story about Baal Peor. 24,000 died in the plague. And here is the story of Pinchas. And basically what Pinchas did was, when he saw Zimri, the head of the Reubenites, the prince, the paternal prince of the Reubenites, of the tribe of Reuben, take custody, the daughter of one of the leaders of the Moabites, into his tent in front of Moses, in front of the whole tribe. Moses, lapse, did not know at the moment what is the law at that very moment. But since everything is arranged, that there are no coincidences in anything, it's called Hashgacha Apratit, no coincidences. Everything is preordained, everything is preset, everything is completely at the moment that it needs to be, Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the priest, high priest, has turned my anger away from the children of Israel by zealously avenging me in their presence. And I did not destroy the children of Israel because of my zealous anger. Therefore say to him, I am hereby giving you my covenant of peace. It will be an eternal covenant of priesthood for him and for his descendants after him, because he was zealous for his God and atoned for his children. What did he do? He took a spear immediately, with great zealousness, with passion, with knowledge. He knew the law. At the moment of together, at the moment of the act, he went right through both bellies. That is the law. That is what is the law to be done when you come at the moment that a non-Jewish woman and a Jewish man are intimate. End of story. You buy it, you don't buy it, totally unimportant. That is the law. And that is why the greatest of all averas, the greatest of all, what's the word in English? Of all sins, for lack of a better word at the moment, is to have an infiltration of a birth of a non-Jewish child that will infiltrate the Jewishness. The father becomes void. The mother is the holder of the keys. In other words, the child under no circumstances is considered to be anything else than what the mother is. So what have you done? You've created a non-Jew. I don't want to go into it because you know what the answer is to this. This is a sin that will not be forgiven even if you do tshuva. So this parsha is a major parsha. It's extremely, extremely passionate. And the Rebbe, in a sikha of 5749, Likutei Sichot, volume 2, pages 342 to 344, talks about this talks about this because in his time is our time is 3,000 years ago. There is no change. There is no different interpretation. There is no addition and there is no subtraction, not a dot and not a comma. The Torah in every language, in every country, if it's a kosher Torah, it is absolutely equal one to the other. And here are the Rebbe's words, I think extremely, extremely important. I should preface, because we are in the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks are the 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, before the destruction of the temple. It's these 3 weeks that talk about our history and talk about why the temples were destroyed, by whom they were destroyed. We'll talk about it not next week, but the week after, when we dedicate to Tisha B'Av, or maybe during the week, I don't know. We'll see what my time frames look like. But extremely, extremely important to understand that these are 3 weeks where we do not enjoy ourselves, that every day brings us closer to destruction. And every day we suffer greater losses until the temples, both of them, destroyed on the same day. So here is the Sikha of, or from the Sikha of the Rebbe. What is the connection between Pinchas, who zealously avenged his God, bringing relief from the plague of divine anger, and the other concepts which arise in the Parsha of Pinchas, the census, inheritance of the land of Israel, and the festive sacrifices? Our sages taught that Pinchas possessed the soul of Eliyahu, the prophet, who announces the true and complete redemption. It is thus not surprising that with his righteous indignation and passionate vengeance, Pinchas achieved a somewhat messianic transformation for the Jewish people of his time, a situation of spiritual deprivation, the worship of Baal Peor, last week's Parsha, and national emergency, the plague, to one of divine satisfaction. I don't think I need to explain that this messianic transformation of the Jewish people of his time is the relationship to the messianic transformation of the Jewish people of this time, and that spiritual deprivation regarding the worship of the Baal Peor, spiritual deprivation today is not less, if not more, than what went on then. And divine anger is something that we need to look at very carefully in our lives today. This divine satisfaction which Pinchas caused by passionately destroying the evil, the disrespect in front of Moses, in front of the tribes, in front of the children of Israel, to do something like that, that is so against the law. Okay. The divine satisfaction manifested itself in a number of ways. The census, meaning the counting of the children of Israel, was an expression of God's affection for the Jewish people. Because they are precious to him, he counts them all the time. Remember what he told Abraham. You will be like the stars in the skies and the sand of the sea. Think about that one. The permanent inheritance of the land of Israel via divinely inspired lottery, which is in this parsha, where divinely inspired lottery is used to give and to partition the land that we are coming into. We're now on the other side of the Jordan, but we're coming into, so the land has to be proportioned according to the bigger and the smaller. And we'll talk about the Tzalafchad women in a minute, but I want to do this here. Okay. And finally, the daily Shabbos and festival sacrifices, which are associated with the joyfulness and celebration. The theme of our parsha is thus: transformation of the Jewish people from spiritual deprivation to virtuousness. It is no coincidence, therefore, that Parshas Pinchas is always read at the onset of the 3 weeks. For reading this parsha empowers us to transform these 3 bleak weeks of Jewish history into days of feasting and rejoicing with a true and complete redemption. Practically speaking, Pinchas has set an example for all of us, showing us how to bring about this transformation, namely, that whenever it is possible to further the moral or spiritual standing of others, one should not stand back and ponder, surely there are greater people than myself for this job. Rather, like Pinchas, one must rise to the moment without hesitation. And just as God granted Pinchas the soul of Eliyahu the prophet, to carry out his mission. Likewise, God will infuse every one of us with the necessary spirit to transform our current exile to a state of redemption. It is our job, however, to galvanize that spirit into action. That means you can't go sitting around and doing nothing. You can't do likes without reading what is written. And when you read what is written, evaluate what is true and what is not true, and look for truth. Don't accept the nonsense that you read day after day and create your opinion because of it. Pinchas is awarded the priesthood because he did what he did at a moment when Moses didn't know. It's not that Moses didn't know. It's because there was a divine plan that the soul of Eliyahu Hanavi, the soul of Eliyahu the prophet, must do this particular thing for Hashem in order to bring the people back to their senses. You know what? So many of us are walking around this world senseless. Why senseless? Because they don't accept their mission. They don't go out and they don't do everything they can in order to be who they need to be and to accept the mission of their lives. And this brings me to the second immensely important conversation, which is, how do you know? How do you know what your mission is? Based on Likutei Sichot, Volume 2, page 346, Sefer HaMamarim 5708, page 240, Sefer HaSichot 5752, Volume 1. In other words, it's a combination of a number of conversations that the Rebbe had, and it's one of the most important conversations that basically have taken on, or I have taken on in my life. While Jewish law obligates each person to observe all the mitzvot, all the good deeds, there is always at least one particular mitzvah which one's soul is drawn to more strongly. According to Hasidic thought, this concept is hinted to by the fact that the land was apportioned by the means of a lottery, suggesting that one's primary mission in life, one's spiritual inheritance, has been pre-allotted to him on high, and one has no choice in the matter. The reason why a person's soul has a particular affinity to a special mitzvah is because each soul is a spark of the general soul which Adam possessed. And corresponding to its original location within Adam's soul, it will have a distinct spiritual path of its own. Consequently, through observing this special mitzvah, the person will become spiritually fulfilled, which will give him an additional enthusiasm in the observance of the other mitzvahs as well. How can a person discover what his special mitzvah is? I know how many times I've talked about this subject to my students, to my friends. There is no simple solution. However, being that a person's mission in life is centered around his special mitzvah, it follows that his evil inclination will oppose this mitzvah strongly, which may give a person a clue as to what it is. In other words, the hardest thing for you to do, the thing that gives you the most difficulty, that is the mitzvah in your life. And for me, that is everything that has to do with the voice. Furthermore, divine providence will inevitably lead a person to circumstances which are conducive to the observance of his special mitzvah. I've spent 45 years of my life writing, teaching, examining, researching every possible way to get my special mitzvah. And I've used everything else that Hashem gave me around it. And for all intents and purpose, I am living that special mission every moment of my life. And when that special mission was over in Italy, in a matter of days, everything became completely clear, and Hashem moved a world to take me away and to bring me home. So, if one is wealthy, for example, his special mitzvah is quite possibly to give charity. Very simple, but very, very clear. In addition to the above, every person is given, in a given generation, will have a special mitzvah by virtue of the times in which he lives. In other words, if you lived in the times of the temple, like I did, your special mission was the voice. Continues in every generation to be what your special mission is. It doesn't change. And in our times, this is the obligation to promote knowledge, belief, and yearning for the coming of the Messiah, since our souls have, by divine providence, been placed into the last generation of exile. We're living, and you know it, in times of excruciating pain, of history repeating itself over and over and over again, and never, 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 never as horrific as it is right now, because in 1930, when my grandfather didn't want to leave Poland because he said it can never happen in Poland. Okay. Today, the whole world is on the same page. Then it was Hitler, Marshemo. Then it was Mussolini, Marshemo. Then it were the alliances. Today it's a whole different ballgame. Everybody knows everything. And nobody can say, nobody can say, we didn't know anything about this. Instead, today, the joke is on the truth, because it's the lies that are known. It's the lies that are taking over, have taken over for the past 20 months. It's the lies that destroy relationships. It's the lies that create war. It's the lies that kill and destroy on every end. But it's the truth that will always win. Love will always outdo the evil. May take time, immense effort, great changes, as it is to find our special mitzvah. But we get there. Remember the Levites who were chosen by Hashem to be his special servants, the singers of his prayers. the carriers of his tabernacle, only the Levites. So the Levites are not part of the census. They get their own, and the Levites do not inherit land because Hashem said so, and because Hashem does not allow. The total number of Levites at that time was 23,000. This included every male aged 1 month and upward. The other census of the other tribes included everybody over the age of 20 who was how does Torah say exactly? Must be counted from the age of 20 and upward, as God commanded, and the children of Israel when they were coming out of Egypt. But they were counted from the age of 20 because they were able to go into the army to defend the children of Israel. There is nothing ever written in the Torah that anybody is exempt from the army. You know what I'm talking about. So, we talked about the Levites, and there were 23,000, and they did not inherit the land. They were completely separated for everything that has to do with holy work. And here is a story, of course, in the way that Torah relates the events of the time. The daughters of Tzalafchad, the son of Hefer, who was the son of Gilad, who was the son of Machir, who was the son of Menashe, from the families of Joseph's son Menashe, came to Moses. What's the whole, why is it so specific? Why is Torah so specific? I mean, they had a complaint. They went to Moses. Why is it so important? Why is it so important that the conversation identifies the line to show how clean it is? That story about the Jewish people, that Hashem wanted them to be clean, unadulterated. So the daughters' names were Machla, Noah, Chogla, Milka, and Tirza. And they came to the tent, and they said, "Our father died in the desert. He was not part of the group that rebelled against God, nor was he in Korach's assembly, but rather he died due to his own sin." In other words, He wasn't part of the complainers who died in plagues. He wasn't part of Korah's group. The earth opened up and swallowed them up alive. They were very sure to explain perfectly that he died of his own sin. He had no sons. Why should our father's name be missed out from his family because he had no sons? Give us a portion along with our father's brothers. Moshe didn't know what to do, so he took the case before God. Do you have any idea how clean the Torah is? You don't have to be a college professor to understand the words of Torah. Rashi, the greatest of all sages as far as commentators of the Torah, he writes his comments for a 5-year-old, because when he begins to study, he needs from the beginning to understand. And the words of Moshe Rabbeinu and the words of Hashem need to be so clear that inside your essence, inside your being, inside your way of thinking, all of what you know and all of what you think is explained with a clarity of explaining to a 5-year-old. Moses was a human being. He made mistakes. He was humble. He was the humblest of all, but the greatest asset to Hashem and his most trusted. Why? Because his ego was not the key. What was the key? His service to Hashem. Very, very, very interesting. I was learning today, and in a psalm at the end it says, Moses his servant and Aaron his chosen. Two entirely different concepts, but incredibly important for us to understand what is the difference between chosen and servant. And what we should choose is all to be chosen servants of Hashem. So, Moses went to Hashem, brought the conversation of Tzalafchat's daughters to Hashem, and God spoke to Moses saying, Tzalafchat's daughters speak well. Give them a double portion of the inheritance along with their father's brother. Transfer their father's inheritance to them. And then we go into the laws of inheritance, which you should learn and you should understand. God said to Moses, ascend here up the Everite mountains and look at the land which I have given to the children of Israel. When you have seen it, you too will be gathered to your people, just as Aaron, your brother, was gathered, because you disobeyed my command in the desert of Sin during a communal dispute where you were supposed to sanctify me with the water in their presence. If you remember, speak to the rock and the water will come out. Don't hit the rock, which is basically what Moses did, and this cost him and Aaron, both of them, for not having sanctified Hashem in front of the children of Israel, the fact that he is not and cannot enter into the promised land. Moses spoke to God, saying, O God, who knows everybody's thought, God must appoint somebody capable over the congregation, somebody who will courageously go out to war ahead of them and return in front of them, somebody whose merit is sufficient to lead them out to war and bring them back safely, so that God's congregation will not be like sheep that have no shepherd. If you listen to those words and you apply them exactly the way they are to who we are today and who is leading us today, and why he is leading us today, and with what power he's leading us today, and in what way he's leading us today, you will find the answer to your questions, if you have any. Hashem says Moshe wants his son to be the leader. Hashem says, no, your son, I'll read you the words of Torah. Exactly. God said to Moses, persuade your own loyal servant Yoshua, the son of Nun, to accept the leadership, for he's a strong-willed person. Lay your hand upon him and present him to Eleazar the priest and the entire congregation. Instruct him in their presence. Grant him some of the glow that is on your face, so that the entire congregation of the children of Israel will listen to him just as they listened to you. When Yeshua needs to go to war, he should stand in front of Eleazar the priest and ask him to clarify the law through the Urim. If you remember, the Urim on the chest plate of the high priest with Hashem's name. that will give the answer before God. They will go out to war only by the word of Eleazar the high priest, and they will come back to war from war by his word, both he together with all Israel and the entire congregation of the Sanhedrin. Can you understand what we're talking about here? We're talking about that there is no war without the permission of Hashem. And there is no end to the war without permission of Hashem. Where does the permission come from? Eleazar, the high priest. But we don't have a high priest today. We don't have a tabernacle today. But we have great rabbis. We have great minds. We have a great, great leader who listens to the words of Tprah and is inspired by the words of the Rebbe. So Moses laid his hands upon him and instructed him in accordance with what God had said to Moses. Why didn't Moses' son get the job? Because he didn't study Torah. He became a great leader, but he didn't study Torah. And without studying Torah, and without being guided by Torah, it doesn't work. So, as the beginning of our conversation, to all of you who talk about that the Jewish people use to win a war, Ein od milvado. There is none without him. There is none. No one, nothing. No magic. Kadosh Baruch Hu. 72 names of Hashem, of our God. Yes. He is the one. Then we talk about all the offerings. We talk about communal Pesach, communal Rosh Hashanah. Everything is completely outlined. Everything is completely perfect. Everything is so clear that, you know what? The most minuscule mind will understand Torah because of its simplicity, which is complex, and because its complexity that is simple. You know, I think the most important thing in everything is to look at the true value of every single word. When you read, don't skip. When you learn, don't learn only a part and then go on to the next one and think that now you know it all. We're not there. Every single thing has its value. And every single word that a person speaks to another is just as valuable. But without action, nothing gets done. So go looking for your special mission. Value what you can do and do it. Don't hold back. Go after it. Work for it. Believe it. And Hashem will grace you for it. Have a beautiful week. A week of peace. A week of health. A week of love. A week of shalom. All the best to everybody. Next week, Shabbat, is the beginning of the month of Av, Rosh Chodesh Av. It happens to be my birthday, so we will be together. This is special to have my birthday fall on Rosh Chodesh Av, obviously, but on Shabbos. So we see each other next week, God willing. Have a beautiful week. Shalom, shalom.